Whatever. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm trying. Eventually, someday, I'll grow up and be a big boy, and I'll know how to do this stuff. All right, so we're gonna go. Yeah, probably not. There's mosquitoes out here, and I sprayed for them, but they're still biting. At least it's not 1,000 degrees, so I'll take that over 1,000 degrees.
That's cool.
All right, so we're gonna go do something like this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody! Welcome to the Crazy Double J's Weathering Podcast with myself, which is James Powell, and that guy over there. His name is
Jason Jensen.
Jason Jensen. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, it's all good, man.
Good to see you. We're a little bit late this month on the podcast, but hey, it's summer, and I had to wait for the temperature to drop slightly lower than boiling. And it's nice. It's actually really nice in here right now. It's probably like 80 degrees. So I'm pretty happy about that. It's a good deal. So what's up, Jason? What have you been doing?
Oh my gosh. I've just been crazy busy.
Yeah.
So
me too.
I've been working on the new I've been back working on sci-fi, working on my G-scale layout.
Yeah.
So the new section is inspired by Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge.
Okay, cool.
And,
all right.
Yeah, so just been really enjoying that and just adding a lot of rust to it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So you're rusting things inspired by Galaxy's Edge.
Things, yes.
Galaxy's Edge. I'm a little bit partial to.
No,
I like it.
I have never been there.
Oh.
I hope to someday, but I've seen tons of pictures. I've watched a lot of videos on it.
It's awesome. I haven't been to Orlando. I've been to Anaheim. Our company, we were lucky enough to be able to make a few things for it. So we have some
very cool
stuff that I've worked on with my own little hands there in Galaxy's Edge, which is really cool. But yeah, it's fantastic. There's some spots that are the market is. I love the market because you walk through this thing and there's stalls on both sides. You look above your head, and there's all these cables hanging, and there's like metal grids, and it's beautifully, the art direction on it's just
incredible.
Just so well done.
And then I'm so excited because I just got a laser cutter, my first laser cutter. So I'm so excited to get that up and running.
So are you you're gonna kind of like little hearts to hang around the house that say like family love, and
I'll probably start working on Christmas ornaments.
Yeah, Christmas ornaments like Santa Clauses and stuff. Yeah, because if you have a laser cutter, you certainly wouldn't want to make any cool railroad stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ran that thing yet?
Not yet. No, I've just been so busy with work and with comic book work and life, but I'll get to it. And then, eventually I'd like to start producing my own kits.
What?
That's the end goal with it. Yeah.
Jason Jensen kits?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
you might sell a few of those.
I might.
That's probably not a bad idea. Holy, you guys heard it here now and live that or recorded, I guess we are, that Jason's gonna make his own kits. That's pretty awesome.
And I just put out a kit with Carolina Craftsman
kits, which is freaking amazing. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I love it. It is so cool. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm always so inspired by George Celios's work.
Yes.
And so it was kind of a tribute to him. And so it was a blast to build it.
I'm really excited that he's having the open houses again, because now it's like every few Saturdays we get to see new pictures of the Franklin and South Manchester. And of course, they're always amazingly inspiring. I mean, you can't ask for a better railroad than that thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like the guy just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
Better. I mean, he's been doing it for 40 years and he just keeps getting better and better.
Incredible.
And better. So yeah, I'm really excited. That new area, Gory, is amazing. It's really, really neat. It's out in front of the windows where he had a workbench, I think, at one time. And it's really, really cool. You said something about you're doing a bunch of rust.
Yeah, doing some rust on my dial. And, I just got to say, and I'm not saying this just because we're sponsored by ammo, but the more I use the product and the more I practice with it and the more I watch videos that are available practically every week from ammo.
Oh, they're really getting good.
To create the realism that I'm getting on my Galaxy's Edge diorama,
Yep.
I don't believe I would have been able to achieve it had I not had the ammo products.
No,
just incredible.
I think that leads into a good thought that maybe this episode is about Rust.
Okay.
But we should do that.
Yeah.
No, I agree. You know, I just saw a couple days ago, they just released a new series of products, which are acrylic washes.
Yeah.
So now, not only are there the enamel washes, they're the acrylic washes also. Yeah. That's pretty cool because Rust is in there.
Incredible.
I can't wait to get my hands on some of that stuff. Hint, hint. Do you have any of those acrylic washes yet?
No, I don't, but I just received the acrylic filters.
Oh, okay, cool. And
so,
you've got good.
Yeah. So I'm going to start experimenting with those, and
very good.
Those allow you to tint colors. Say you have a brown color down, and you want to maybe create a shadow which has a bluish or purple tint to it. Right. Well, you can put this over it, and it doesn't change. It doesn't cover the color like if you used a regular acrylic. It doesn't cover it. It tints it, and you're able to create shadows or other colors with it.
It's almost like, in a way, if you're like putting a lighting gel on your light.
Exactly.
And you're, but just a little bit. It's very subtle. It's not turning the whole thing purple or blue or, you know, especially if you want to do shadows. You're going to put a little bit of blue in there to simulate the color that you see in shadows. That's really the blue from the sky. And it's amazing if you learn how to use this stuff. It's really, really cool. And so I unfortunately don't have any of those either. I'm really gonna have to step up my game of requesting stuff. But that's really, really cool. I can't wait to try the washes. You know, I love the enamel washes, and it seems like they're coming out with a lot of acrylic stuff now. And I'm wondering if that's because, you know, enamels are more and more, they're getting kind of frowned upon. And so, you know, they're trying to do the same effects with acrylics.
They work well together. You can use the acrylics
without a doubt.
The enamels.
Yeah, without a doubt. The more layers, the better.
Yeah, because they won't affect each other. If you put down that acrylic first and do an enamel wash over it. Yeah, it won't. Yeah,
no doubt. So I'm wondering, and I'm curious, like you said that you've been working on the big G scale, sci-fi, but really Star Wars right now diorama. You're doing some exterior buildings that looks like you were using like peanut butter jars or something. I don't know what they were.
Well, there's two containers. The one, I took a plastic water pitcher. It's a water pitcher that's plastic. Right. I turned it upside down, and I just shaved with my Dremel tool. I shaved the handle off of it.
Okay, cool.
And then the second container, the biggest container on there, is a container that had powder, protein powder.
Protein powder, yeah, okay.
In it.
Yeah.
So
you get ripped.
Yeah. So they're big. They're big containers.
Okay, all right, cool. So I was wondering how they were huge.
Yeah, they're like 12 inches tall, 11 or 12 inches tall each. So
what are the lids on that? They look like almost like vacuum filters or something like that.
Exactly. They're vacuum.
Is that what they were? No way. They were. That's what I thought they looked like. That's really cool. That's cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you're using ammo to do rust on the large scale stuff. Yeah. And you do on your HO stuff, you do both kind of acrylic paints and the ammo stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So why don't you explain a little bit about what you do on the large scale stuff, because it's amazing. I can't wait to see the video.
Sure. And it's basically the same stuff, or the same technique. I'm using the sponge technique for some of it, where
Okay.
you're putting on your base color and then taking the ammo paints and sponging them on. And then after it dries, you then go in with the pigments, the pigment powders, and brush over that. And because you created a texture by using the sponge, the pigments stick to all that texture, and it just makes it that much better.
That is one thing that I love about the pigments, is that you create rust texture as well as rust color. So now you're getting this like almost, if you do it right, you can almost get like a flaky rust. Like
exactly.
Yeah. So you take and you go on. You're saying you use the ammo acrylic rust colors, which there's a ton of them. There's all kinds of them. They have washable. They're not really washes per se, but they call them like washable rust. They come in the same acrylic little bottles.
Well, what's incredible about those colors is that, some of them, it has a reddish tint or an orange tint that you actually see in rust, or they have a dark brown that actually has kind of a purple tint that you see in really old rust. So the colors are they're perfect.
Let me see. Now, this is not ammo. This is the only thing that I use that really isn't ammo.
Okay.
By any that I use a lot of. Okay. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. But this is Pan Pastel, which a lot of people know. This is red iron oxide extra dark.
Okay.
And it's got a bunch of purple in it.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you're talking about, that when you get into that really old rust, that's that really heavy, like heavy iron type of rust.
Yeah.
It's got purple in it.
Yep.
And it almost has, depending on how old it is, and the sun's hitting it in the right way, it almost has an iridescence to it. Like this crusty iridescence. So when you're using the ammo pigments and you put them over the acrylics, you start getting that crusty color. And then the brown that you're using, and man, it's slipping my mind right now. It's not Rust Tracks. The ammo acrylic color that it's got a little bit of purple in it. Are you bringing that back over top of the pigments? Are you laying that down first?
Let's see.
And I know we experiment. It's not always the same technique.
Different techniques on everything. Yep. So I've actually been using the dry brush paint. Recently,
the Dio paint.
The dark brown, and that dark brown does have a sort of a purple tint, just slightly purple to it, and dry brushing that on, and then with those towers that you were just talking about, I painted those tan, and then I did the rust wash, the enamel rust wash, where I used odorless thinner
to
streak that down.
Now, on your base color on your towers, for a lot of people that are listening to this maybe haven't seen that. We'll put some pictures up so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. That your base tan kind of color, it's kind of like a Tuscan, like at the bar scene, right?
Yeah.
What's the town called on Tatooine, where the cantina is?
Can't think.
Come on.
I don't know.
It's an outpost. I can't remember either.
So
it's where all the scum and villainy is.
But that tan paint is actually from Home Depot. It's an acrylic.
Okay.
And I just buy a quart because I use so much of it working in G scale. And here's a good tip. Go to Home Depot, go to the paint section.
Yep.
And they have mist tints.
Oh yeah. Oh,
People will take home paint that they had mixed and it isn't quite right when they get home. So
yep.
they bring it back and Home Depot marks it down. You can get a gallon of paint for $3.
Yeah. When I go on the road and we do some of our theming stuff, and we have to go to Lowe's and Home Depot like every
Yeah.
day. I mean, it just because there's a lot of creativity involved. We don't always bring everything we need.
Uh-huh.
Mist tints, I go right there
Yeah.
because you can get a $60 gallon of paint for like $10,
Yep.
$15, you know,
Yeah.
and so it's you have to go there. It's
Yes.
and sometimes they don't have much, and then sometimes they have like 40 different, you know, mist tints,
Exactly.
quarts,
Exactly.
pints, you know, gallons, all kinds of stuff.
So I'll get a dark brown, and I
Mhm.
don't care what color dark brown it is,
Right.
for when I'm doing dioramas and I paint the base of the diorama a dark brown and
That's
then sprinkle dirt and grass. And
Yep.
it all gets covered up basically.
I
but
did the
you
exact
just
same
need
thing.
a brown. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
I have a quart of like bare whatever that was just kind of a brownish color, and you
yep.
start with that to cover your plaster, your foam, or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you go over top of that.
And see, I prefer Home Depot because the bare paint that they sell is thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's where like I don't want to knock other companies, but
well, you're Lowe's and Valspar, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah, they're more watery. They're thinner.
Well, yeah, and you know, if you're going to
not as
cover
thick.
scenery, you're going to cover scenery, you want that kind of body to the paint.
Yep.
You kind of want to cover up some stuff. So yeah, totally. Notice I'm switching back and forth between Starbucks and Perrier's. Good old Pepsi. I don't know, man. I got hooked on soda water, Perrier, and I drink it like it's going out of style now. And I don't drink a lot of soda because I drink that. And for some reason, a lot of people think it's gross, but I love it. I drink it all the time now. And I just needed the bubbles, I guess. That's all it was.
I'm a caffeine junkie. So.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why I have coffee here too.
Coffee, soda. Yeah.
I'm double fisting it in the morning at Starbucks. So you lay down your you got your base, your plastic. You're using these jugs or protein powder jugs. Did you primer them first?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. I sprayed a primer on them, just a Krylon gray.
Yeah.
Primer.
Okay.
Then I brushed on that. Then I went in with the Dio paints, the dry brush paints from Ammo, and I lightly put streaks going down.
That's how you got those streaks. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's really cool. So that gave you a little bit of color variation.
Yep.
So some people will use the oil spotting technique. Well, they do a bunch of different colors, and then they just really light, almost with the oil brushers, and 3 or 4 or 5 different colors, and then they.
I can't think of the colors.
Okay.
I used a light gray and a light tan. It's like a sand.
Okay.
It's called sand something, but it just makes it look like the rain has stained it and just left streaks on it.
Right. Okay. So, one thing I've used in the past before there was ever like the Ammo Dio paints was like stencil paint. Stencil paint's similar where it's really hard, but you can load your brush up with it, and it's really the old school like stencils that people used to put around their rooms. They're made to look almost dry brushed, so that paint will come off almost in like this. It's almost feathered when it comes off the bristles.
Yeah,
and that's exactly
I know what you're talking about,
yeah.
because they didn't want people to buy the paint and then stencil and have it run and drip.
Right,
so it's thicker.
Yep.
So
it almost looks like it was, if you do it right, it almost looks like it was right. Yeah. It looks like it was like airbrushed on almost.
Yeah.
So that stuff's pretty cool. Dry brushing really with the military modelers isn't something they really do. It's kind of looked at as like an old school kind of technique where nobody really does that anymore. But there are instances, it definitely more so in model railroading, but there are instances where they do use it and it can get some really, really cool effects.
Yeah.
And model railroading, we do it all the time. But even if you look at let's say cellulose again, You don't see him dry brush nearly as heavily as he used to.
Yeah.
To create we did it to create, highlights. But there's other products now that you can create highlights with that look better. So
Yeah. Yep.
So you put down acrylic rust colors, then you put down some pigments, right?
Yep.
And then on top of the pigments, you do anything else? You do washes or anything like that?
Well, on those towers, just to kind of back up, after all that was dry, my streaks,
Yeah.
I did the rust wash and used odorless thinner. So you just put a little bit of that paint on there.
Yep.
And then you streak it down with your odorless thinner.
Okay.
And for people who are new to it, the odorless thinner makes it look really wide. It makes it look like you've gone too heavy or it's too dark. But after that odorless thinner evaporates and it dries, it just leaves the rust and
then it feathers it again.
It feathers it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't have a hard edge.
That's right. Where if you just try to do it with straight acrylic, you'll get that hard edge. It doesn't feather.
Right. And even if you mix like a water or a thinner with it, when it dries, you can still kind of see the edge of where you painted. And there's definitely some good reasons to do that. But you see it a lot in model railroading that people will do rust streaks, but they'll be really hard edge.
Yes.
And if you use reference, right? Like we always say, reference, go on Google, find pictures of today. I was doing this bridge, right? And I looked up rusty green bridge, and sure enough, boom, picture exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Downloaded it and used it for my reference. And you could see you don't necessarily have a lot of hard edges on rust streaks on most things. It feathers out, and it kind of almost feathers out in like a triangle almost. It doesn't really feather out like this. It feathers out like this because that water and that oxidation kind of, as it's rolling down in different times when it gets wet, it spreads out like this, not like this.
Yep.
And it's
so pretty. It can go from dark brown in the center out to your reds to orange to yellows.
Yes.
And so it's not just one product. You're doing different washes and building up
layers,
layers
and layers and layers is what you got to do. I mean, you look at let's say an old 55-gallon drum, right? That has no paint on it anymore. And it's sitting out and rusting. A lot of that drum will be, let's say it's crushed, right? And it's laying on its side. A lot of that drum will be that purplish, dark rust color. But then there'll be a part, let's say where it's crushed, where water has collected, maybe it's recently rained, and around the edge of where the water collected, that rust will almost be like this vibrant, bright orange, right? Where the new rust is, and so there's old rust colors, there's new rust colors. Ammo has medium rust. It's really cool. The being able to play with those colors, and once you start experimenting with them, you get the idea. But I like using obviously acrylics because they're just easy to use.
Sure.
I think the problem with acrylics that I have, and I actually used today the Ammo figure painter retarder, right? So it retards the drying of the acrylic. So you can lighten your color or darken your color with a black or a white or whatever. And you could start spreading the color out, going from a dark to a light, and it doesn't dry while you're doing it.
Yeah.
It almost acts like an oil paint. Right. So that's something you can use with acrylic paints if you really like acrylic paints, is just a retarder. And then you can do a lot of flowing and mixing.
If you get a hard edge, what you can do is take the pigments and put it a little bit on a thin brush and soften that edge with pigments.
Yep. And that
have it bleed out.
And there's times when you're doing rust where maybe you do have, like, let's say you have a color like a paint and you put rust on it and you get a hard edge. Well, you can always take from that hard edge, you can bleed down.
Yeah.
Where it's maybe a scratch in the paint where it really doesn't rust above the paint. It rusts below, or doesn't rust above the scratch. It rusts below the scratch. And you could do that and that'll look really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's that's something that I use a lot, which are like the scratches effects or the heavy chipping effects.
Yep.
The heavy chipping effects, they really are what they say they are. If you're going to put down some, like, let's say you're doing, you want a peeling paint that has rust coming out underneath it, right? I'll generally start with a couple colors of the acrylic rust colors, like a Trax rust, and then maybe a oh geez, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. Let me see. Yeah, like rust Trax, dark rust. There's a red brown colors, and I'll take those and I'll spray those for that bridge I was doing today. I just put them in the airbrush. By the way, I got a new Iwata.
You got a new compressor.
Ninja Jet is called. I'm not completely sold on it. It's not really any different than the old Harbor Freight one. I like it. It's still loud though. I thought it was going to be, because it was Iwata, I thought it was going to be a little quiet, and I read some reviews and people seem to like it.
Yeah.
The only thing is it runs all the time. When it's on, it's always running. Whereas at least with the Harbor Freight one, it would turn off when it got up to pressure. The Iwata, it's always running. And if you turn it off and you don't release the air out of the airline, out of your brush, because maybe you want a phone rings or something like that.
Yeah.
If you don't release that air, you try to turn it back on, it'll just go hum, because that compressor, there's air in there and it's trying to start and it can't. So you got to release the air and start it up. So it's a little, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. We'll see.
I'll use it more. Used to.
Sure. It's spraying really well. It sprays very smoothly. I mean, it's really nice. Good. But completely got off track about what I was talking about there. But what I'll do is I'll take, and I just actually have been doing TikToks because I like the way the video editing works. Yeah, so I just put like a background song, they have all these background songs, and I'll load up a bunch of videos. Well, I did one today where I just loaded up a bunch of photos. My daughter says, "Dad, nobody puts photos on TikTok. You can't do that." Whatever. I'm just playing around documenting. So I loaded up a bunch of progress photos of me working on this bridge, all the way from cardstock to the final thing glued down on the layout. I put it together, and that's another subject for another time, but it's all made out of cardstock. Glued it together and painted it just with a black Krylon black, right? Let it dry, satin color. And then I took my airbrush and I just started modeling the whole surface, just almost like camo with these different colors.
Yeah.
Right? It covered the whole thing. And then I wanted, because it's supposed to be a huge bridge, I really wanted the effect of this thing's big, right? I didn't want to use heavy chipping, the heavy chipping effects, because when you use heavy chipping effects, you can take off a ton of paint. Yeah. And so I use what they call scratches effects, where the paint removal is much more subtle. And so it's good for making like on armor. And this is also one of the things that doesn't scale out perfectly to HO. It's really made for a little bit bigger scales, but that's okay. It still works. So I covered the whole thing in the just with a brush in the heavy chipping effects. Let it all dry, or not heavy chipping. I'm sorry, scratches effects. Let it all dry, and then I painted it with a it's like a safety green or something. It's a sage green. It's an ammo color.
Yeah.
That is kind of like what they call ODOT green. ODOT green is the green that bridges are. The interstate bridges where they have the steel trusses or the steel beams underneath, that green color.
Yep.
That's what's called ODOT green. It originated in Oregon and Oregon Department of Transportation. That's why they call it ODOT green, right? So I found a color. I said, I want to make this bridge. I want to make it look like a real bridge, or at least what we consider a real bridge. Remember,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
layout's on another planet, right?
Yeah.
So I made this
Yeah.
funky looking bridge that looks like a giant 7, right? And I painted it with that green. And then I took a little, I let it dry, and then I started wetting the surface where I wanted to scratch. And you just take a brush and you just barely dampen the paint, and you'll see the paint almost lighten where it's wet. And when it lightens, it takes a few seconds, but when it lightens, you can hit it with like a little scratching tool,
Or
and
like a toothpick,
a
right?
toothpick, and you just kind of can scratch off some of the paint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your rust colors will stay underneath. But the paint that's on top of the scratches effects or the heavy chipping effects stays there.
Yeah.
If I would have used heavy chipping, I would have got really big chunks coming off, and I thought that wouldn't have looked to scale. So
exactly. Yeah.
So I used the scratches effects and scratched a little bit off. And then the other day at work, John Fields, who's also a model builder, he gave me this little tool. It's a this is a fiberglass chipping tool, right? Huh. So it's like a pen, and it comes with these little fiberglass inserts, if you can see there. Put it right there. See that? That little brush in there, that's actually pieces of fiberglass, and they're super fine. Like more fine than you'd find in like a fiberglass boat or a car. And you take those and you kind of scratch the surface with it, and it'll peel up that paint just ever so slightly.
Oh, cool.
That's cool. Except the fact is, those little fiberglass things is a reason why they make it so you can make it longer and longer. They come off immediately. And they are the most small, little, itchy darn things you could possibly find. I mean, they're all over your model when you're done. So I had to keep vacuuming them up. I got them in my hand. They were itching like crazy.
Oh, geez.
So it's cool.
Wow.
It makes some really cool effects because you could just kind of scratch away very lightly, and it'll pull off some because it's really fine, but yet it's fiberglass. So they're stiff enough to, it's stiffer than what a brush would be. Right?
And I would imagine then if you put pigments over the top of that when you're done, it would get into all those little.
So that's exactly what I do. I take, so remember I was talking about the barrel where around the edge of the water, where the water maybe was sitting on the barrel was that bright orange. So I was taking these areas in the fields. So I was doing all these rivets around. That thing's got 1,000 rivets on it, right?
Yeah.
And so in the middle of the rivets, I scratched off some paint. And then at the bottom of those areas, I took alcohol and a little bit of pigment. And I just put that pigment right in the bottom of that. So I did a couple things. I got ammo medium rust pigment, which is fantastic. When it dries, it looks spot on. It just looks like rust. There's also colors like, let's see, this here is the Red Oxide Shade by Pan Pastels. Same type of thing. You just take that on there and just put it with the alcohol, or you can use odorless enamel thinner too, and put it right at the bottom. So where like the water has ran down and got caught in the flakes of paint. And it almost looks like it's crusty and starting to build up in the flakes of paint.
Yeah.
Man, it looks good. It really does. And then beyond that, I would take the light rust wash, the ammo light rust wash, which is right, let's see, right here, which is one of my, I talk about this stuff all the time. It's one of my favorite ammo products.
Yep.
And odorless enamel thinner, and take a really small brush. I mean, we're talking like 00, 000, 000, 000, and do it wherever there's a little chip of paint. Take the odorless enamel thinner and just dab, little pull down. You just little dot and pull down.
Yep.
And you get a little streak of rust. Now that streak is a little bit more pronounced than the big streaks you want. You just pull down a little bit, and some more than others, especially where areas would get hit by rain. Yeah. My island is supposed to be really wet. It's supposed to be raining all the time. So there'd be a lot of rust on this bridge that's been not used forever. And so you just pull down.
And you just rusted all those pipes too on your layout.
Oh yeah. So so I put.
Was that a different technique or
same? So that was along Bergen Harbor, part of Bergen Harbor. That's kind of like a little inlet. Almost like a little fjord. It's very small. It's just a very small part of Bergen Harbor. Um, I ran a bunch of pipes up there, and I wanted some different colors. So I used a base of, I think I used a black base, black paint. And then over top of that, some of them I used that dark iron oxide pan pastel. Some of them I used the ammo medium rust pigment mixed with alcohol. And then I layered those colors kind of on top of each other. And it gives that kind of crusty look.
Yeah.
I did one where I painted it rusty and I did the pigments, and then I did heavy chipping effects over top of it and then painted it black. And then over top of that black paint, I took a really, really thin wash of white to almost give it like a faded look.
Mm-hmm.
And then I chipped it back with the water and the a brush that had a bunch of paint in it. It was dried, so it could chip really well. And those bristles, they get really hard. So as soon as you hit that paint, it kind of pulls off. So I wanted to make a pipe that was like painted black at one time. The paint started peeling off. So that's how I did that. And those are all just sprues, right? Those are just 1/35th scale model sprues. And all I do is I'll take the side of maybe a big sprue from a kit, clip it off. I'll clip off with my Xuron track cutters. I'll clip off all the little nubs, and then I'll take my X-Acto and carve as much of the remaining parts of the nubs as possible. And then I'll just take a really heavy, like I don't know, probably like a 40-60 grit or something sandpaper, and I'll just pull it through my hand, and that'll pull off most of the nubs. And then from there, now it's got some texture, so it'll absorb the paint will stick to it really easily. And I just take a lighter and bend the sprue wherever I want to make a bend, and it just works awesome. You could do things like you will take, and I just did it today, take masking tape and cut it really thin and wrap it around sections of the pipe, and that works out really well.
Then it's so fun to play with rush streaks where the water flows, even on rock.
Oh yeah.
Having that rush streak go into all the cracks, following it all the way down.
Yep. I've been doing this water kind of coming off rocks. I'll do wherever the water's at. I definitely darken that area up a lot. That I use wet effects by ammo. I'll generally take the color, whatever the base color of the rock is. I'll get some more paint that's similar color, darken it up, put that where the water is going to be. Then do whatever my water effect's going to be with my gel medium or whatever. And then put wet effects around that. And it just makes it look like it's
so
permanently
cool.
wet. It's a really, really cool technique.
It is so funny that you and I have been basically working on the same thing in a way, because you're building the girders for that bridge.
Right.
And I built a steel balcony for this diorama.
Very similar. Yep.
And I made I-beams using strip wood and then cutting cardboard strips that I glued on each side of it, sort of to make a sandwich to make my I-beams, and then just rusting them.
Yeah. It's funny that I just posted pictures of this thing up today. And I was building it a couple days ago. I was posting pictures up, and people were surprised I was using just cardstock and not like styrene. And I'm thinking, I get that, but at the same time, I use wood glue and little blocks of wood to glue the thing together. And then to glue the edges down, I'm using CA and Zip Kicker. And that cardstock is absorbing the CA, and then the Zip Kicker's hardening it really quick. So basically, you're turning that cardboard. This is really thin mixed media cardstock. It's like a vellum type of it's almost like note cardstock. And so now it's all completely basically soaked with CA, and you're spraying it with Zip Kicker, and that CA is hardening. So you're basically creating like a plastic. So it's really not any different than using a really thin styrene.
Sure.
For me, it's a little bit easier to work with.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a bigger scale, so I'm using basically cardboard from cereal boxes.
Yeah, I use that all the time.
Absolutely.
Cardboard from cereal boxes is
and
perfect.
Once you get it all built, spray the whole thing with a gray primer to seal it all, and then paint it. And,
done.
Yeah. So
I'm going to turn on my light above my head right now because it's starting to get a little dark outside. I'm facing
Oh,
my
okay.
garage door. So give me 1 second.
Cue the elevator music.
I'm back. How's that?
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if
oh
you
my
can tell the
God,
difference.
that's way better.
Oh, is it? Yeah, I wonder
No,
why.
no.
I actually turned the lights on. Somebody's home. Yeah, well, it is what it is. So yeah, so I did that bridge up, and that, I painted most of that with the acrylics, but I did a bunch of pigments and pan pastels on it before I painted it green. Just because that putting the pigment and the powder underneath the paint, and you're sealing it basically with your chipping fluid. When you do that, you're giving a little, once again, use the word body again, you're giving a little body to that area under your paint. So when you chip it, it gives it almost like a texture. Like you say, when you take the pigments after you chip and you put the pigment on there, it gives it that kind of chunky, crumbly rust that you'd feel. And you could do it actually with heavy chipping effects, and you build up that pigment quite a bit. You can get it where I used it on the one little barge I made, where you can get it where the paint is almost looking like it's bubbling out. And just before the paint comes off and the rust is exposed, you get that where the paint, like on the side of a boat, right? A really old boat. You can see that where the paint's kind of bubbling up, getting ready to chip off and flake off. You can get that effect.
Yeah.
And that looks really cool. You combine that, put a little bit of white on a black paint, give it that salty kind of crusty look, where the black is kind of faded in the sun. It looks fantastic. It looks really, really cool.
I know in the past I've added texture before I even painted it. I just put on white Elmer's glue and then sprinkled on baking powder.
Absolutely.
Right into the glue. And you can go as heavy and as thick as you want, then paint it. When you put that rust wash over that,
God, man,
beautiful.
It picks up in all those little pits, and that rust wash, it flows so nicely and gets in there. Another thing, you take like a baking soda, and you can mix that with paints also.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
If you mix it with acrylic paint and you just dab it on in little areas just to give it a little body.
Yeah.
Canadian geese, the royal mounted Canadian geese flying by. It just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And so that's another technique you can do with rust. There's the ammo oil brushers. They have rust colors in the ammo oil brushers, and that is perfect for streaking also.
Yes.
It's a little heavier, so it stays in place. So you can almost, you can like pin spot it in an area with the brush on the end, and then take your enamel thinner and just kind of pull it down, and that works like the rust wash. A rust wash is made to flow out over a surface, whereas the oil brusher, there's streaking effects, does the same thing, where it's made to make streaks, but then you use that odorless enamel thinner and you can wash it out to get rid of some of those sharp edges. It's really, really cool stuff.
Well, and like I'd mentioned before earlier, there's so many videos on how to use the ammo stuff. Man, you just do a simple search on YouTube and you'll get a ton of videos on how to use it.
Yeah, no doubt. So. I think you do personally a really good job with just acrylic paints, like craft paints, doing rust also.
Well, thanks.
I mean, there's not a lot of people that make it look as good as you do. I mean, once again, you're a professional artist, so you kind of got the eye for it. But
I think the key is to go small.
Yeah.
You want those dots when say you're using a sponge and you're on a sign and you're going around the edges of that sign. You want those dots to be really super fine, because think it's HO scale. I mean, you think of an HO scale figure and you think of
Rust
the size of their thumb, the size of their thumb. I mean, a rust spot like that is like huge in real life. So you want it to be really tiny.
Yeah. So when you and I know you've said this before, but when you use the sponge, what type of sponge do you use?
I have about 3 different sponges that I use. So there's the sea sponge, which is the largest.
Yeah. Really chunky, right?
And then you've got your a grout sponge that you can buy at Home Depot. It's for working with grout tile. Yeah. And then there's a foam that I don't even know if you can get it anymore. I have a lot of it, but it's foam that they used to pack stuff in. Like years ago, they stereo equipment or electronics. It was all packed in foam and it was all cut, and the object would fit inside there. And it's a really fine foam.
It's soft.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And I mean, they've done away with that. They don't pack stuff in foam like that anymore. I mean, maybe styrofoam now, but yeah.
Who likes styrofoam anyway? Darn those people that work with styrofoam.
Yeah.
I do. You ever use like the makeup brush foam? Like they sell those little triangles, you know?
Yeah. I have a long time ago. I just haven't. It doesn't have enough of a texture to it, in my opinion.
Very, very, very smooth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very smooth. So you have to have a really light hand with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know like with the pan pastels, they send all these little foam tips and like a little applicator. And I don't use those for that same reason. It's so, pan pastels, I guess, really is made to be used as like a paint, right?
Yeah.
So those applicators they send, they're so fine that you don't get any texture at all when you use those. That's why I just use a brush with that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not something that it doesn't. You have no texture whatsoever when you use those little brushes. That it's not even a brush; it's foam. But sorry, all the noise outside. There's kids
that's fine.
Skateboarding and people walking down the street, and they're looking at me going, "What are you doing, you weirdo?"
The most important thing is really patience, and I know that's hard for a lot of people, but take the time to dip that sponge into the paint and then dab it onto a cardboard until you get it just the right consistency on that sponge, and then go to the model or the sign and dab it on there very slowly. It takes time. There's no way around it.
Do you want to take most of that paint out of that sponge?
Yes.
You want to get it pretty.
It's almost like dry sponging.
Yeah, it's like dry brushing, right? You don't really want much at all.
That's right.
If you see the sponge marks, probably too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to get it to where you're just putting a little bit of color.
Yeah.
And it does vary. You do want some there, depending on the technique, you'll want some texture.
And I'm probably known for using bittersweet chocolate, which is a really dark brown. I sponge that on, and then I'll go in with a reddish brown wash maybe over it, or the pigments, brush pigments over that, because then you've created that texture already with the sponge, and the pigments just grab to it. So
is that bittersweet chocolate? Is that an ammo color? Because
no, that is Americana.
Oh, America. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a craft paint that you can buy at Michael's or any craft store, and it's made by Americana, and it's bittersweet chocolate.
Bittersweet chocolate. Well, yeah. I mean, people ask me, they say, "Hey, you know Jason Jensen?" And I say, "Yeah, the guy that uses bittersweet chocolate for everything." That's the guy. I couldn't really remember his name, but I think it's bittersweet chocolate. Yeah. No. Yeah,
it's just a really dark. It's just a really dark brown.
Sometimes there are colors when it comes to like the craft colors, right? There's colors that you fall onto, and you just keep using them because you like. I used to use this color,
and
barely have any craft paints anymore. I have some.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I don't, I mean, obviously I have a lot of ammo stuff. But one of the reasons I don't use them is because the stores around here, even like the Hobby Lobbies and stuff, all their paints, they're not, I never seem to get the quality of the paint that I want. It's always too like, even when they're really well shaken up, it's like runny or greasy like, and
yeah, they're not
and
consistent.
they're not consistent, and they don't cover well. That's why that's why I use the ammo stuff, because as long as you shake that stuff up, it always has a perfect consistency. It doesn't have that like, oh, maybe it'll work, or maybe it won't work, or maybe it'll cover. You could take ammo yellow, and as long as it's shaken up really well, you could one shot and it's pretty much covering everything. Unlike, try to do a yellow craft paint and paint that over top of a red, or you're not going to do it. You're going to have 20 coats, right? But there was this color I used to get. It was Delta Ceramic Coat, and it was called Mudstone. And that was like my go-to concrete color. I absolutely loved it. It looked I loved it. I don't even think they make it anymore. Last time I looked for it, I was like, I'm just gonna get some of this because I'm just gonna try it and see if it really is as nice as what I thought it used to be. But now I'll take white paint, like a white primer, since it's it's got the kind of the chalk basically in it. It's got that body in there that allow other paint to grab it. And I mix that with the concrete pigment, mix that up, and that is, man, paint that on plaster, and it looks so good. Do a little bit of like black wash on it, or you could do some efflorescence, or mold or whatever. I love it. It looks so good. So that's you run into those colors every once in a while that you just hang on to, like your bittersweet chocolate, right? You just use them all the time.
That's right.
So, but how about with rusting? Is there any other thing you do with rust that maybe other people don't do? Maybe other people should know about?
Not really.
Okay.
I wish there was some new found technique, but it's really just taking the old techniques and, like I said, practice and patience.
Okay. I have been liking using, this is really odd, but with foliage, right? I have been taking the ammo rust shader. Right?
Oh, okay.
Because it's orange, but it's almost got like a little bit of green in it, right? And I could be completely wrong, but I swear there's a bit of, and I will put that on, I'll spray that on leaves.
Yeah.
Because if you get it back at a tree and you look at a tree, it's not green. It's green with other, you see little bits of like orange, or on eucalyptus trees, which we have tons of out here. You don't really have them in Colorado, but some of them you'll see like a purple, or when you stand back and look at them at afar. And so I put this rust shader on the base of my foliage, and man, does it look cool. Like on these palm trees I made, I put it in like the insides of the leaves, and it just adds just a little bit of that warmth to the green, and it looks so good. And then it's something that actually I didn't add to the bridge I just made. I didn't put any rust shader on there, and I should have. I did things like I made the green faded. I added some white to the green paint and kind of modeled that around on the surface, so it wasn't all the same color. But the shaders I really like. I like those a lot.
And a side note, I think it's important to know the lighting at your workbench compared to the lighting over your layout or where your diorama is going to be sitting. Right. I think that's important.
Mine's one and the same, so it kind of works well for me.
Okay, good.
So you can see workbench layout, right? It is important. Lighting is, lighting is everything. I can't believe how much just changing. I put daylight balanced LEDs up in my track lights, which was a pain to try to find those little, they're called cob LEDs. They were, I mean, I had to research the manufacturer's spec sheets and try to find out a substitute. And I finally did. It took a long time, but I found them. And they're just these little LEDs that are flat. COB, it stands for circuit on board. And I actually found the exact same ones, but at a different Kelvin. So at a different color temperature. And I was able to get daylight balanced ones. So now when I take pictures on there, man, I love how the pictures come out now. They come out like they're supposed to. Yeah. It's not all warm, super warm. So that lighting is majorly important. You really need like daylight balanced lights. If you're going to have daylight balanced on your layout, you need to have daylight balanced on your workbench also. You can see what it's going to look like in a photo. When I take pictures outside, I don't do that as much as I did because now I have daylight balance on my layout. And it's similar. I still like outside a lot better, but it's a lot more similar. So I get a lot better look now.
Oh, yeah.
And I just keep getting messages like crazy. Crazy. But yeah, so I don't really have any other techniques other than, I like acrylics and then pigments. And then if I'm going to do chipping, I'll put the fluid on there, be it scratches effects or heavy chipping, and then the paint, and then I chip, and then I'll pigment, and then I'll wash. But it's always layers, and it's always a little bit at a time.
And I think we have such an advantage using the ammo products because they're just so perfect. They're the colors, the textures, they work well together. Like I'd mentioned, the enamels and the acrylics. I think a big part of that, and maybe people listening don't know this, but MIG's history in paints and weathering products, he's just been doing this probably the longest of anyone.
Oh, he won international competition awards.
Yeah.
I mean, he just and ammo is really about weathering, right?
Yeah. And he wants to put out the best product on the market, the best. And he's doing it.
And let me tell you that's one thing about ammo is they absolutely care about their products, how they're used, the people that are using their products. They want you to get better. They're putting out lots of videos now. Really, really professionally well done videos. There's other companies out there that do weathering products. And honestly, this is God's honest truth. I don't really think they care. I think they're just selling to sell. But ammo just keeps innovating and keeps getting better and better and better products and trying to make everything more realistic. That's why what I'm doing in model railroading, even though I'm trying to do something that's, off on a different planet, on a different world, whatever, I want it to look a little more realistic. It's fantasy, it's a little whimsical, but I want it to be more real than what you've seen maybe in the past with model railroading. And I got a long way to go. I look at some stuff and I'm blown away by people. But I want to try to get that realism that we haven't, kind of like with Static Grass or with Martin Welberg and his stuff, and and how he's just pushed scenery to the absolute limit. And I know it could get better, but he's just way beyond where we ever were. I would like to be able to do that in structures and weathering and kind of create that whole kind of wow, that feeling of this stuff is fantastic. And that's really, and you're doing that. I mean, you've brought when we're talking about your layout, it's so beyond. We could talk about Celios and whatnot, but if we put him aside, it's so beyond what is out there with composition and color and the more you progress on it, it's just people are blown away.
It's just practice, right?
It is. It's practice. And it's all about.
I love working on HO scale and then being able to switch to the G scale or the 1/18 scale, to go back and forth, and then to get to the point where at any time I can work on either one, and it's to the point where you can paint little details.
Yeah.
You could paint a figure. You could paint any little thing that it's just going to add to it and make it better.
You know, and that's why, like a few weeks ago, I took and made this weird steampunky looking engine.
Yeah.
Thing. Well, Wayman Humphrey sent this video. You think he sent it to you too, and he said, "Hey, look at this!" And then here's this guy that makes these crazy dioramas out of scrap junk, and he made this Studio Ghibli walk. I can't remember what the show is. My girls are gonna kill me for not remembering what the show is because they love Studio Ghibli. Too. Yeah. So, but there was like this walking castle thing, and I said, "Man, he just used junk like you've been using on your large scale dioramas, on your sci-fi dioramas. You just took stuff and you found items and put them together." And I was like, I want to try that. So that kind of doing what I did. Not that it's ever going to be used for anything. It was kind of a neat, like, how can I use different things that are just, and it literally was stuff around the house that I could cut up and make different. And I could paint it differently. Yep. It didn't end up exactly how I wanted it. It's not great, but it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. So it allowed me to kind of expand my horizons and look beyond small scale.
Yeah, it gets you thinking in a different way. I think too many modelers get stuck on, well, this has to exist in real life. This, they call them rivet counters, right?
Yeah, sure.
But
I have a bridge I just made that doesn't exist in real life, but it's got 1 trillion rivets on it, so they can count those all day long.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? I want to say something. All right, here. A couple people asked me how I put all these rivets on this bridge.
Oh yeah,
and it's not prototypical. The rivets are too big, but it adds a lot of texture, a lot of detail. So what I did was I went to Hobby Lobby, and in the paint section, the model paint section, they have these things, fine line applicators, and this is the fine tip. And what it is, it's just got a little needle valve tip on it. See that little metal tip right there? It's a little bit bigger than a hypodermic needle. And I just put yellow glue in it. That is just Type Bond 1 yellow glue. And I've done this for a long time with my rivets where I've just kind of dipped a toothpick into yellow glue, but it always dries out really fast. It takes a long time. When I put it in here, I just barely squeeze the bottle and go,
put little dots.
Exact same amount comes out every time, and you could just go long. It took a long time, but it's cool. It adds awesome texture, and it puts enough glue. As long as you get a nice little dome of glue, when it dries, it shrinks down a little bit, but there's enough there that when you dry brush over it, or whatever, wash over it, you can see them. And it gives some, and I really like the technique. It's cool, and it's really, really easy, and you don't have to use like I think Jimmy Deignan had the Monster Model Works at one time, the little rivet maker.
Okay. Yeah.
What was that? That was a nail hole maker. Somebody had like a little rivet punch for styrene, but this is great for,
what I've been using for rivets for 1/18 scale. Women use them to decorate their nails.
Their fingernails.
Yeah, they put they almost look like little diamonds or
they're crystals. Little rhinestones. I've been using the same thing. You could go to Hobby Lobby and buy a pack of them for like $5.
You can buy a whole sheet. Yeah, and they're already adhesive. They're sticky on the back, so then you just stick them on there and then paint it. And
the ones I bought, unfortunately, they don't have adhesive on them, but there's just tons of them, and they're like a millimeter. They're a little bit bigger than what they should be for HO scale. But they're still, they'd be a big bolt in HO scale. But they look awesome. You just glue them on, paint them, done.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Rivet counters would get mad because you can't see the threads in the bowl. And if I was going to do a competition model, no way would I ever use it. But they're great for giving texture.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic. I love them. Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, have we gone long enough?
I think we've only went 5 minutes so far. So
feels like it.
I think this is great. I hope this is just a little bit of kind of like a primer. primer on rust.
Okay,
Forget the prompt. Yeah, it's just a little bit of never mind the pun, I guess you can. It's just a little bit of information on how we do our rust. There's tons and tons of techniques. There's lots of stuff you can use. But I think you guys could check out if you see Jason's stuff, certainly Jason's stuff, or if you see mine, you kind of get an idea of how we do our rust. There's a ton of different ways to do it.
And always use photo reference. Oh,
reference, right?
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with using reference. You'll see really quickly if what you're doing makes sense. If you want to rust a sign, go to Google, download old rusted signs. There's tons of them, and just look at it. Bridges, just download it. You're always going to find every single thing you could possibly want, and just download it and use it for reference. I mean, it's super important. That's why you need to have a laptop or an iPad or something, even your phone. I use my phone all the time at your workbench so you can look it up. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, dude, this has been fun. It's
always
great. It's great. Can't wait to do the next one, but this is good. I hope people appreciate this, and
hopefully they
I certainly have a lot of fun.
Picked up a new technique or something new from it.
yeah, and certainly, when people are listening to this too, if you got any questions, comments, or whatever, leave them in whatever format you're listening to. You can leave comments, but we'll put some pictures up as we're talking along this video of what we were talking about, which we haven't done before, but I think we're going to throw that one in this one. So Jason, you have to send me some pictures that I can post on this video.
I will.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for joining in, and we will see you guys soon. And
thanks, everybody.
Till then, happy modeling, and goodbye.
Bye.